Hi, so today we are going to talk about how complex numbers are classified. In the previous classes or grade levels, we have learned so many ways to classify numbers. The basic one, the first one that we start off with is natural numbers. The set of natural numbers start with the number 1, 2, 3, etc. and it goes on and on. And then we learn about the set of whole numbers. Well, whole numbers is nothing but we start with 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So it includes an extra 0 and all of the natural numbers. So after whole numbers, we learn about integers. Now integers are all the negative numbers, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So integers include the natural numbers, the whole numbers, and all the negative numbers also. That is the set of integers. Now, after integers, we also learn about all the decimals that go in between, the fractions and the decimals that go in between. So all the natural numbers, the whole numbers, the integers, everything plus all the fractions and decimals. Okay, all of them together are called real numbers. So that is a big subset. They're called real numbers. Now the fractions and decimals can be classified into two. They can be called rational or irrational numbers. And we know that irrational numbers are decimals which does not end and does not repeat. Does not end and does not repeat. And the rational numbers are decimals that repeats, but it has a pattern. It does not end, will not end, but it will repeat. It has a pattern. So this is what we've learned so far in high school. So if you put them all under one box like that, all the numbers that we have learned so far fall under the real numbers. Now we're going to learn about imaginary numbers. We spoke about it. Numbers which has a negative inside a radical. So we defined it as the square root of -1. 4 times -1. So we can put 4 separately, negative square root of -1 separately, and we would write the square root of 4 as 2 and the square root of -1 as I. This is what we defined as the imaginary number, the square root of -1. So imaginary numbers will always have I, the part of I with it. That's how we know that they're imaginary numbers. Imaginary numbers. Let me scroll down. So imaginary numbers can be numbers like 3i, -4i, or I by itself. It can have any number as its coefficient. You can also call pi I. You can also use ei, all the constants that you've learned before. And now what happens when we take a real number and an imaginary number and decide to add them or subtract them? Now we have a new set of numbers called complex numbers. Complex numbers. So complex numbers are numbers like 2 plus 5i, or -3 plus 6i, or half minus radical 3 over 2i, things like this. All right. Now, all these are complex numbers which are both imaginary, which are not completely imaginary or completely real. They're called just complex numbers. So there's another set. I'm going to divide this into 3 parts so you can see the difference. The second set is numbers which are just imaginary. all these they're still complex numbers, but their real part is 0. Real part is 0. So if I generally say complex numbers are of the form a plus or minus bi, a gives you the real part and b gives you the imaginary part of the complex number. Well, these do not have a real part, so you can think of this as 0 plus 5i. So 5i, if I just give you 5i, it just means 0 plus 5i. So the real part here is 0. So the second type is when they're purely imaginary, they're complex numbers as well as purely imaginary. The real part is 0. Okay. The third one is our regular numbers, our real numbers, 7, 1/2, negative radical 3, etc. These are also complex numbers where the imaginary part is 0. The imaginary part is 0 here. So you can call them purely real numbers, but they're also complex numbers. So all three of them are complex numbers. The first type is neither purely imaginary or purely real. The second one is complex numbers, but they're purely imaginary. The third set is also complex numbers, but they're purely real. So that's how you can classify complex numbers into the three categories that we have in this video.